Hello everyone, we've got another testing video of the Sigma prime lens that we've got here, but I'll just talk you briefly through the lens. So I just want to talk you through this Sigma lens. I just wanted to give you a closer look at it. Obviously I've got other videos for that as well, but I just want to show you the various options on this lens, what it does, and hopefully this little segment will be helpful, and hopefully it'll give you more of an insight on what I've been doing with this lens as well. So the lens is actually called a Sigma 500mm prime. It doesn't zoom. It's got an aperture of F4.5 APO DG hypersonic motor, and a lot of times that's abbreviated for HSM. So it's a 500mm solidly built steel constructed metal lens. And it has a drop-in 46mm filter holder which you can put in there, such as polarizers or ND filters. It has a dial for adjusting the polarizer if you've got a polarizer in there, and it also has some focus options on there with the limiter. So we've got a limiter switch there for full 8 meters to infinity and 4 to 8 meters. That allows you to adjust the focus for animals that are far away, and obviously you can adjust the switch. It has a autofocus and manual focus switch there. You can adjust the tripod collar by adjusting this knob on there, and obviously you can make it vertical or horizontal. It doesn't click. A lot of big cameras have a clicking option that allows you to tell you audibly when something's in horizontal or like landscape or horizontal mode. The actual tripod mount is nice to hold. It's got grooves in there, so it sort of fits your hand, and it's got multiple screwing options along there for attaching to your tripod. The actual lens comes with a solid lens hood which is made out of metal, and it has rubber going around the end of it. The only thing that I am not too happy with is the length of it, because it's only 3 inches long, 3 to 4 inches long. Most of the manufacturers like Canon and Nikon and Sony produce lens hoods which are a lot longer, and that stops flare coming into the actual lens and ruining any shots you may be doing. Obviously the tripod collar is adjustable with a tightening knob, and essentially also there is a little rotating attachment where you can attach straps and that sort of thing to it. Its minimum focus is 4.5 meters, which obviously is quite long, which means it's ideally suited for anything like wildlife or sports that are far away. But I just wanted to illustrate this lens and just show you it in brief before we look at the images, and I hope this little segment was helpful. So without further ado, we want to have a look at the examples in this video. I've done a lot of charts. Let me just get the chart for you. Here's one of the charts that I've been using to test the lens sharpness. We've got a lens sharpness test card here. We've got a colour chart here, and another test chart here as well. We've been looking to try and test the sharpness of this lens. So what I've decided to do is give you some real world examples here as well as an alternative, because sometimes test charts are all well and good, but I think sometimes real world examples give you a better idea on how the lens performs. So without further ado, let's have a look at the examples. Okay, welcome to the examples of the Sigma 500 prime lens that we're looking at and reviewing. So I just want to give you some real world images, because obviously I've done some tests on the test charts and showed you the results from that. But sometimes test charts are all well and good, but they don't always translate into real world images. Sometimes you might do the test slightly wrong or incorrect, and it might give you a false reading. So going out in the real world and testing your camera and your lens is always advisable. So that's what I've done. What I've done is I've taken a selection of some images from my back garden, so you can have a look at the images yourself and get an idea on the quality. So I'm going to talk you through the images, tell you what apertures they're at, and it's up to you to make your mind up. So looking at the first image, we have the EOS R at F4.5, and I just want to zoom into it so you can pixel peep all you want and have a look at these images in more detail. First of all, let's talk about the bokeh. The bokeh looks fantastic and great. You can see the we've got another model duck behind this particular duck. This is a water feature if you're wondering what it is, and it's blown out beautifully. We do have like a pond waterfall system at the back behind this, and I'll show you that particular in the video that we'll do later on. I just want to show you some examples of video as well. But in this picture you can see that the background is blown beautifully out on the EOS R. 30 megapixels, these are JPEG images. It looks fantastic and great detail in the bokeh. Zooming in into the image itself, we can see that we've got some good sharpness there. We've got certainly a lot of detail showing up on the pole of the actual umbrella. Obviously the duck's nicely rendered and looks sharp enough to me. And obviously you can see a lot of detail on that pole. So let's move on to the next image, which is, I try to get them in comparable, so I had to move the lens a little bit further back on the 90D, the APS-C camera. It works out at 800mm because of the 1.6 times crop, so you just got to remember to magnify the magnification, the focal length of your lens. So it gives us 800mm, and you know this is at f4.5 as well as the previous image I just showed you. And looking at that, we have not got a lot of detail. Obviously the pole that's holding the umbrella looks blurry. I'll just zoom in there so you can see that in more detail. Doesn't look very sharp at all. So, and the bokeh, if we just talk about the bokeh briefly, it looks very busy, not very pleasant. It's similar sort of vantage point, so it should look very similar to the full frame, but it doesn't. And I don't really like how it looks. I know the lighting did change slightly, so we've got a bit of sunlight coming through the clouds, but I just don't think this image is a very good image at f4.5. Moving on to the next image, we're looking at f8 on the EOS R. It looks a lot sharper. We've still got nice bokeh. Obviously you can see the duck in the background there, but it still looks pleasant. We can go right in there. You know, that's 66% there. You know, really good detail. Going to 100%, even more detail on the pole. And it renders the image nicely. I love the contrast. The contrast is fantastic, and I don't see any problems there. Another image at f8, it certainly looks a lot sharper. We've got some sharpness along the beak of the bird ear. It's brought a bit more into focus in terms of the pole holding the umbrella. You know, bokeh fantastic, if I'm honest with you. So it does improve the image significantly at f8 on APS-C, where you probably could get away with f4.5 on the EOS R, or probably 5.6 will probably be fine as well. So let's look at the next image. So obviously we've got an eagle statue here. This is the EOS R at f4.5. It looks really nice. I think it's quite well rendered. Contrast is nice. It looks sharp enough to me. The eye, if we zoom right in there to 100%, there's a bit of softness here, but it's not bad. It's quite reasonable. Looking at the image that we've got with the 90D, now I did realise that the sun did change a little bit, so obviously it got a little bit brighter because we briefly had a bit of sun come through the clouds. But looking at this image, focus is terrible. It's not sharp at f4.5. Bokeh doesn't look that much better either. So I would say using f4.5 aperture on this particular 500 prime, or probably it may apply to other older primes, because this is a legacy lens. You got to remember that it came out in 2005. It's 15 years old, this lens is, and I don't think it's capable of dealing with the resolutions of modern cameras. Full frame, it seems reasonable and quite okay, but when it comes to APS-C, I think it struggles. So let's have a look at the next image. So this, if I'm not mistaken, I'll just double check the file info data. If you're wondering how to do that in Photoshop, just go to File and bring up file info. This is the EOS R at F8. Looks really nice. Bokeh looks fine. It looks very sharp, a lot sharper than it was at F4.5. If we go back there, as you can see, it's quite soft. Here it's sharper. So at F8 it gets better, full frame does, on this particular lens. Let's have a look at the next image, which is APS-C, the 90D, F4.5. Again, it's not terribly sharp here. Let me just remind myself what the details of the actual image is. So it's F8 at, obviously, at 800mm. The sharpness has got better. So if we just go back to F4.5 and then we compare it to F8, it's sharper, it's better. There's no doubt using APS-C at F8 should result with some good images. I would probably say avoid cropping if you can, because all you're going to do is lose detail by doing so. So let's look at the next image. So here we have a garden gnome. I call it the Gandalf wizard in my garden. This is the EOS R at f4.5. If we look at this image in more detail, I think there's a bit of softness around the eye there. So let's have a look at the next image, which is APS-C, the 90D, f4.5. You can see it there for yourself. It's just soft. The images are soft. It's not quality, and I don't like it. So let's move to the next image, which is going to be the EOS R at f8. We've got more sharpness, looks better, and the contrast is better. Just keep in mind that there was a little bit of difference with the lighting changing, but to be honest, comparing both, I would certainly say the EOS R produces better results with this 500 prime lens. Okay, let's have a look at the 90D at f8. Now it looks a damn sight better. If we just compare the images here, look, that's at f4.5. It's really soft. Doesn't look fantastic. But if we change that to f8, then certainly a lot better. Now it's probably not super sharp, but it's certainly more than acceptable. So my conclusion here is using the 90D at f4.5 in this lens isn't a good idea, because we're just getting horrible softness appearing, which would suggest that the lens isn't capable of dealing with super high megapixel cameras as well as it can do with full frame cameras. So let's check out the videos examples, but that's my roundup of these examples. I hope these examples helped you out and give you a fair comparison, and thanks for watching. Okay, I thought I'd give you a few more examples before I show you the videos. So first of all, I've got some duck models in my garden. I thought it'd be a good idea to take some pictures of those and show you potential sharpness on both cameras. But one thing that I forgot to mention was I'm using ISO 500 on both cameras, both the EOS R and the 90D. So while some of the test charts videos that I did was using 2500 ISO, so obviously you might want to check those out just to check out how good these cameras are at higher ISOs. I thought I'd do a lower ISO test as well in the real world, so you get an idea of the capabilities of these cameras in the ISOs as well. So I've got a few more examples I just want to run through, going through the apertures and telling you about what I think about the particular lens in regards to modern day cameras. I do think legacy camera lenses are not as good as the more modern day ones. The reason for that is the new ones are actually optimized for the higher megapixels of the modern day cameras, where the old ones were not, because these high megapixels cameras didn't exist back in the day. So just remember that whenever you think about picking up an older lens, it may not be able to give you the resolution that you want. So here we have another duck model image that I took in the back of my Canon. This is the EOS R. So it's 30 megapixels at f4.5 on the lens, and it does render a good image on full frame. I just don't think it's quite as good on APS-C. So this is f4.5. We'll just quickly compare that to the 90D, similar sort of image, and it's just a little bit soft here. I can see that already without even zooming in. So let's go back to EOS R and zoom in right in there at 50%. You can see the eye is nicely in focus. It's not tack sharp, but it's very close to it. So it looks quite nice. If we look at a 90D, zoom in again at 50%, it's soft all around it really. The only thing that seems to be a little bit in focus is maybe the beak, but the eye isn't. And it almost looks like it's got camera shake going off, but I used a 10-second timer on both cameras on a tripod, so there's no camera shake at all going on here. So as you can see, it's not fantastically great. I think the shutter speed was around 300th of a second, so it was fairly fast. And at some points in time, I think the shutter speed was actually around 2000th of a second, so camera shake should not be happening. It just looks soft at f4.5. So let's have a look at the next image, which will be the EOS R at f8. Looking there, the only reason you might see a little bit of softness going off is because I think one of the plants was in front of it, but it is pretty much, you can see good detail, good contrast in this image, so it looks pretty decent. Let's have a look at the 90D image here, where I think it's tighter in, and that, as you can see, that plant there that I'm just going over with this cursor was in the previous image. It's actually over the actual duck. So looking at this, obviously it's a lot sharper at f8. It's rendering good image contrast, and it looks fairly reasonably sharp. It's not super tack sharp. And as I've said in previous videos, I wouldn't want to crop on 800mm. There's no need to. Once you've got an 800mm, there's no need to crop at all. And you know, you can always get closer to your subject matter. I know some experts and professionals will say you can't. There's always a way. You can always, you know, use hides. You can always camouflage yourself to blend in with your environment. Those are other techniques of getting closer to your subject matter if you're trying to do so. So let's have a look at the next image, which is another white duck I've got. This will be at f4.5. Does look a bit dark. I think we were getting some heavy cloud cover coming through, and that's why it looks a lot darker. But it's still rendering a good image on the EOS R. You know, there might be a tiny bit of softness going off around the eye, but it still looks good detail. You can still see good detail of the, you know, the duck model regarding the feathers on the actual duck. So have a look at the 90D at on f4.5. It's rendering some of the detail, but it looks a little bit soft. If you're doubting that, let's zoom right in there. And you can see there certainly is some softness going off there. That's at 200%. Sometimes I think that's a bit too much. 100% looks better. And you can see there is softness all around going on. So let's have a look at the next image. This is the EOS R at f8. and we're getting certainly some good detail there, and it looks quite sharp to me. Looking at the next image, which is the 90D at f8, and the difference is amazing versus f4.5. Let's go back to the f4.5 image on the 90D, and I just want to zoom out just a little bit. That's the f8 on the 90D. It looks sharp, it looks reasonable, and it looks okay. But at f4.5, it just looks soft all around. So what I'm taking away from this is that APS-C is not fantastic on older prime lenses. I would recommend you stick to using full frame cameras on older prime lenses. This might be applicable to the Canon 500 IS version 1 lens. If you've got that old lens, I probably would say avoid using APS-C if you can, and if you have to use APS-C because you're trying to get closer to your subject matter, don't crop. Please don't crop, because you'll just magnify any sort of imperfections in the lens. So let's have a look at the video, and we'll see you later in the next video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I hope to see you soon.